right, here we are together again, back for day number 18, which is called Making Changes. And I love this one because it is fun and it's a fun thing to practice and to work on to, I think, help you like your own artwork maybe better, but also to learn what it is that you like. So I will show you what we're doing today, and it's this, or it's this, or it's this. And that's so, look at, see all the little changes and all the little differences. So that's what we're going to kind of work on today is like, okay, if I'm painting this one thing and I got it and I like it, what could I do different to like it better, to make it different for a season, to make my mom like it because this is her birthday card, right? And so we'll work on little small changes that we can make today. But supplies are going to be just like normal. We're going to need our watercolor brush. This one is a size 10 Winsor & Newton. A pencil and a kneaded eraser if you've got one is great. We will need our watercolor paper. This one is 3 inches by 3 inches, but look, I've got 3 of them ready to go. So I would say at least 3 is going to get you what we're practicing today. If not, a whole page. I think I don't know if I said my towel, which I love a towel instead of a paper towel, and a water jar. Remember to keep your water kind of lower if you fill it all the way and you clean out your brush. The extra water is going to drip down your brush, and that's more water for you to take account of and to control. What else? If you're filling out your calendar, keep going on that. It's so cool. And we will get out our card for today. So we're at day 18, making changes. Have fun with your art. Try something once, then change the composition one time. Oh no, composition. I hate spelling errors, but I've got one. Change the composition one time, the colors the next time, etc. And then choose your favorite. And it's such a good way to take the pressure off of the things that you paint. If you're going to paint 3 and pick your favorite, then none of them matter as much. And not only are you going to pick your favorite, but while you're doing the artwork itself, you aren't worried so much. And so you're going to maybe work from your gut more than your brain, and it all just kind of works out to really help. So let's get something to drink. This time it's lime LaCroix. Make sure you have your candle and make sure to trim your wick so that your friends don't tell you that this is a disaster. And let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with observing for a moment, okay? And let's say this is the first one. So we notice that we have got some very kind of like chill, lovely colors. Nothing is very dark and nothing is very light. The vase itself is sort of a long vertical rectangle or, pillar. It's like kind of rounded, but it's long and tall. And we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 flowers. They are like a light sort of faded reddish pink color with yellow centers. We have put in a line here with these little, I don't know, like checkerboard, I guess, like maybe a tablecloth. And the colors vary between like a green and a light reddish color that's probably this plus water, right? It's just a little bit lighter. Also, we can notice that Audrey made a mistake, but we're not mad about it, it's okay. It's actually interesting maybe to go like, oh wait, look, and then you move on. So that's what happens when people see your mistakes too. Oh my gosh. One-handed quote without the body. That is very funny. Okay, let's go to number 2. So for this one, the variations that I made are that I took, it's still the same shape basically, but I took it and I turned it into 2 different colors. So we have stripes. So that's nice. Basically same shape, basically same bottom. Okay, so like the sketch itself isn't too much different. It's just adding these horizontal stripes. And then look at the flowers. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What was this? 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So less flowers, And so I changed the composition of them just a little bit. And this is also lovely. The sky is a little bit lighter. The checkerboard, I think I got it right this time. I was probably really on the ball after messing it up the time before. Notice how there are white spaces between my colors on that checkerboard tablecloth. I'm also not mad about that. We worry about getting our brush all the way into those corners, and we get very into perfection about it, but it is just not required. So that's number 2. And number 3 is, what if we kind of stay in the realm of one color? A couple changes that I made on this one right off the bat. I moved that pot all the way to the other side. And I sort of tried to do the reverse of these flowers, where instead one pops out to the left, right? So I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 flowers. And that was 10. They're similar, but now the centers, look at that. The centers are purple. So we're really sticking with sort of a, I'm going to say the wrong word. I'm going to say like monotone, one tone colors. I don't know. Palette, a very simplified palette. Does that sound good? Okay, and on this one, I did this checkerboard, and actually, if we look at that, we notice we don't see any white spaces like we did here and here, and that's because I did the whole thing light purple first, and I went in with my brush and did the dark purple ones on top, which we can do because we work light to dark. The pot is a bit of a different shape. It's more rounded out, but it still has basically the same shading as this one on this side. And I mean, they're really similar, and yet they're also different. And this is just a fun experiment to do one thing and make little changes. And you won't believe what you come up with, and you love it because it's yours and you're the one who had that cool idea, you know? So these are the 3 that we're going to do for today. I think on camera, we probably should just do 1. I was going to do 3, but I think you'll be mad at me because we'll be here forever. So let's say we're going to do, I'm trying to pick which one really quick. I think let's do, man, I love that one so much, don't you? Sits here and decides on camera while everyone waits. We're going to do this one because I want to show you the vase and how we can get these stripes in here. And then you can do as many flowers as you want, and you can do any colors that you want. But I think this gives us some variety when we put all of our paintings together for the 30 days as well. So if you liked any of these, you can take a screenshot right now to remember them, because I'm going to keep the other one on the paper instead. And we're going to go with this. And we're going to take one piece of paper, but I do want you to keep your extras, because the point is for you to sit there and make these slight changes, right? And then come up with more than one, because that's the thing we're learning today. Have fun with it. Try something, change the composition, the colors, you know, the opposite, do a mirror effect, try to change the shape of the flowers. You got all these options, and those are just some ideas for you. Okie doke, smokes, let's do it. Here is my kneaded eraser. I'm ready to go because we use pencil and eraser to draw. And I'm going to look, where does this horizontal line start? It is kind of like thirds, but it's up just a little bit. And the way I'm looking at thirds is if I were to take my hand like this and take my 2 fingers, what I'm looking for is that I'm creating 1, sort of, I'll do the tips of my fingers, 2 and 3, and are they about the same size? Like if I divide it with these 2, 1, 2, and 3 should be the same size. So this is where I take my fingers and I kind of adjust them a little bit. But really, I would say it's about this. We're about, you can either put it at 1/3 or you can put it just above 1/3. And since these are 3" by 3" papers, you could also get out a ruler. And now I want to test myself. Let's see if it really is thirds. Oh, it's just under 1/3. Look at that. I was going to do you wrong. So just under 1/3, because there's my inch line right there. Okay. Now we know. So, but I'm still going to guess because I don't want that ruler out, because it makes us, you can use a ruler. I use ruler in certain things, but we don't need to for this. So notice how I just marked that spot on the left, on the right, and notice that I'm holding my pencil back like this. And that's a really sort of helpful way to do it for straight lines. And I'll sort of pull them towards each other. Remember, we're pressing lightly on our pencil so that we can erase freely. And from here, we're going to start with sort of the next biggest shape, which is the vase right here. I bet you I can kind of lay my pinky finger down next to it. So that's about the space I'm working with. And I'm going to maybe do 2 lines like this to start. Do you see how they overlap that back, you know, tablecloth? And if I come about maybe halfway between the top of the tablecloth and the bottom, and I do this curve, it's like a little smile. and I'm going to connect my sides. From here, I'll start to see what's wonky about it. But for now, I don't care. And let's look how tall it is. It's like all the way up to here. So I'm going to come a little taller. Still pressing lightly because, for example, I know I'm going to erase this line. And if I put flowers and stems and they overlap, I want to be able to do that. So we'll do this one. I think I'm crooked. Like I think I'm leaning towards the left, but I can't tell yet. This is how sometimes I tell. See how I turned my paper and now I realize my line wasn't as straight as I thought? I do this constantly and it really bugs me. I know I'm like, nothing needs to be perfect, but man. So sometimes turning your paper like this and using that outside line to guide you gets you a straighter line. And from here, I'm going to start putting, you guessed it, and I know we've done these before, but these really wonky little circles. We did them on day 16 very recently. So they aren't supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to be kind of weird. I'll put one of them right here. You can do whatever size you want, but I would say if I were to place this inside of the vase, it wouldn't fill the whole width. It would fill maybe most of it as a little guide for us. I got one here, and now if I wanted to copy this, I'm going to look. If I put one here, there's one close to it in this direction, and there is a little bit of space where I see those stems. So maybe one like this. One up here, look how much stem I can see. So I know I've got a good amount of space and it's over to the left a little. So one like this. I know some of you were like, oh, I wish she would have picked that other one. That's why I don't usually show you 3 options. That's not very fair. Between this one and the next one, I'm observing that there's a good amount of space right here. And that also it's not touching the corner of the pot. It's a little bit to the left. So something like this. I like these when they do have some sort of straight sections in them. So if you like it that way, great. If not, round circles, it will be very cute here too. Look, it's like a little Christmas tree or a little pyramid. And I didn't even see that before. And I've got 2 that stick over to the right. And I bet you I'm going to add another one because we can make changes anytime we want, right? And maybe you're taking this one and making your own changes. You don't even have to do this one. You can look at this one and make adjustments. So I'm going to pull this out a little. And I feel like I kind of want one more flower. Where do I want it? I don't know where I want it yet. So I'm going to take and curve the top of this pot. If we've got a curve here, got the same curve here. What I do like about this, and on all of them, one thing that I definitely liked was these curves. The stems come up and they fall over. So we need the fall to make it, you know, the way I really like it. It's these. This fall is great. And on this one, it's mainly that one, but that was enough for me to go, ooh, I love it. So let's make sure, like, if I do these stems, this is where I know I can see it. Pretend line and fall. Okay, so that I can put my stem there. But that's how I was figuring it out. Where do I see enough white space that I would be able to see the curve? I'm going to do the same thing up here. Like you can do real line, pretend right through it, come up and over because I want that big fall. Cute. I probably cannot even see the stem for this one, so that's okay. For this one, I want another fall, and I have the space to do it, so I'm gonna whoosh. Okay, I love it. This one doesn't matter. I'll just add a little stem in there. The stems just need to somehow be where, if you followed them through, the end of them would be in the pot. That's all that matters. Cute. And see, we've already made changes from this one. You're doing it all the time, but just the challenge itself is just to do several in a row where you just intentionally find changes to do. I'm going to wait on these for a second because I actually want to do my little like grid on the bottom first. Actually, let's finish our flowers. Look at this. Depending on where you put the little circle or oval, it makes them look like they're tipped up or over. So if this one's tipped over, I might put that oval on the bottom and it makes it really, really gives us that effect that we want. But you decide what effect you want and then you just put them, you know, kind of pick direction based on that. Don't they look like olives now? Yum, I love green olives. Here's our question for the day. Completely unrelated to our topic, but do you like olives? And if so, is it green olives or black olives? Green olives for me all the way. Black olives are like fine. But, okay, I'm looking at this. I've got 2 rows and 2 half rows. Interesting. So I think I can put, what happens when I put my line right down the middle? So, okay, oh, I forgot to show you something. I wonder if you noticed it too. On this one, my squares are all the same size. On this one, they are receding into the background. Do you notice it? That's why they're smaller, a little bit bigger, and these would be even bigger. Interesting, huh? It's just like a little perspective thing. We're going to do it this way for today because it's more simple. So for a second, I'm bringing this one over. Okay, and we're just dividing this bottom into thirds. So you'll take 2 rows. Let's kind of divide that space. Oops. Just like we did before into thirds, but I'm not going to check myself this time. And see how I did it on both sides? Nope. Camera work. Okay, see how I did it on both sides? So then it's easier for me to kind of go like, yeah, they seem the same distance from the bottom of the paper up, right? Ish, and that's all we need. And then we're going to pull these lines together and we will all of a sudden have 3 rows. We are not looking for perfection, so we will not be worrying about that here. If you want to kind of straighten something out a little bit, go for it. And then from here, one thing I actually like to do is if I have a big shape interrupting it, I like to divide up so that these squares aren't perfectly centered on it. So you might just go like this to start. And then you're just going to pick some distance and then just try to match that distance. Pressing lightly on that pencil, you'll be able to kind of change anything that you want to. Now I'll come back over here and guess on that same distance. Maybe start here where you can see the whole thing. We'll come up. And now we've got this little grid, which I think is so cute. A checkerboard, polka dots. I love sort of those like classic types of style. Okay, and now maybe you're going to leave this blank. Maybe that's one of your changes. Maybe this top background is going to have polka dots on the whole thing. Okay, just realize if you do that, the easier way would be to paint a very light background and do a darker color for the polka dots versus drawing circles and having to go around them all. Just since we're planning for watercolor, we're going to think about that. All right, we said we're doing these, so we're doing them. Well, I'm doing them. You're doing whatever you want. And all I'm doing is I'm matching this top curve. And I'm going to just follow it. And then same thing I did down here, try to match that same distance. And try to keep a little bit of that curve. You also could, look at this, I could come to the bottom and come up. And now what I learn is like, okay, I've got this much space. Is it 2 or is it 3? And you can kind of choose. If you get too tiny, just realize you got to fit a brush in there. So, but I don't do the math and figure it out ahead of time. I just start, I press lightly on my pencil, and I know I can move it if I want to. You should be, well, you shouldn't be anything, but you might be wrapping up your sketch. And we'll see, this is what they look like. For the paint part today, because really the technique has nothing to do specifically with our paints. It doesn't matter what medium you're doing this with. We're going to make up some puddles just for fun, and we're going to do this, what I like to call coloring book style, where all we're doing is making small puddles, trying to realize how much control we need for when we get to here. So we'll choose what size, like probably small puddles. And we're just going to fill these in. So let's now look at, I'm going to keep with these colors, but you do anything you want on this and have fun with it. And maybe this is part where maybe you're like, I don't have time to do this 3 times today, Audrey, and that's okay. And then maybe you're going to just like make some changes from this one to the one you paint today. You change up the colors before you even do, you know, your first one. So, but I do want like a nice light blue background. So I'm grabbing this 5th blue up from the bottom center, and I'm going to add some over here and then right away add water because I want that nice, really light color. And I'm going to add the tiniest bit of green to it because I actually want it to tip into like a robin's egg blue. And if I were to think about what I'm seeing for a robin's egg blue, I think I do see a lovely light blue color with just a hair of green. Whoa, not that much. So I cleaned my brush out and added water, and I'll see what I've got now and make small adjustments. For light colors, you don't need much paint, you need more water. And then I want yellow, so I'll get some yellow. And once again, none of these colors are too dark or too anything, really. They're kind of just, you know, I don't know how to say that. A little bit of paint and a little bit of water. And so I like this color. You're just finding colors you enjoy. So for today, this yellow will work both for flowers and for squares, and I like that. And if I were to choose, you guys should see what you think, but remember, one of them you can see the white lines and one you can't. Which one do you like better? I mean, that's personal preference. I'm going to do this one. And then I'm going to get, so I need a darker color now for this, and then an even darker version of it. So I'm going to grab that blue. I might just take it right from here. So this is that 5th one up. And if you take it right from the color palette and don't mix, then the nice thing is that you don't have to mix to create more of it either. I think this might be nice for the medium color, and then I'll have to get even darker for the next. You know what, I like to say zigzag, which is like pivot, you know. I'll pivot a little bit, and I'm going to do like more of a teal. So I'm grabbing a green and mixing it into a blue for this darker color. Now, notice this puddle for the darkest one is very small, and it has a good amount of paint. It's very like concentrated with paint, but controlled for water. And that will be great. And then we're going to look and see what else we need. We need a good green. I'm going to do the 5th one up from the bottom right, which is an olive green or a mossy green. If you do not have this color, you would take some sort of a green, maybe a yellowish green if you have one, and add maybe a little bit of brown to it and just do small adjustments. Also, let's be mindful of what's happening around us, which is like, look at this color. Can you see it? I'd love to see what's happening in these jars. It's like, this is why watercolor is therapeutic. And now my water has changed to a greener color. Okay, where are we? We need one more color, and that's the centers of these flowers. Now you can choose it now or you can choose it later, but whatever it is, you don't need very much water. So you'll, you know, if you had a clean, dry brush, you would be putting the tip of your brush into the water for this one, and we'll be working with a very small puddle. So I'm going to move these guys out of the way. Get my paints moved. Make sure you're comfy in your chair because we're going to start the painting part. And you can begin anywhere you want. You can already notice this is a nice flat wash in the background. We did flat wash on day 15. So if you wanted more practice, you can go back to that one. I like to paint the other stuff though, and then do the flat wash kind of afterwards. So let's begin by doing, you know what? Okay, I was going to say this, but if we actually did the flowers first, then we could do this whole checkerboard and then dry it before we got to this. So let's do flowers first. I'm dipping the tip of my brush into my water only and grabbing some of my yellow puddle. So even if you go right to your puddle, I only need the first third of my brush put into that puddle in order to sort of have the control that I want for this small space. And remember, we said coloring book style. So now we're just hanging out for a minute. We're just taking our brush and filling in. We're going to avoid the centers because I want to see the pure color of whatever I choose. You could, if you've got a really light color, you absolutely could paint with it first and then go over it. But that's up to you. Remember, when it's a tight space, and these are, to press very lightly on the tip of your brush and maybe even hold your brush more vertically to get into those small spaces. And if you have two that are next to each other like this, look, I'm just going to turn them into one shape. Why couldn't they be one shape, right? And that's kind of a good thing to think of because you'll see less lines later on. So if you've got two things next to each other that are the same color, I would say almost always you can turn them into one shape instead of two by painting them at the same time. And they're painted. So I'm going to touch my brush to my towel, and if anything got like too wet, see, I'm just going to lift a little bit of it back up and then touch my brush to my towel again so that these can just dry, you know. I love that light yellow color. Yellow's happy. And since I'm using yellow as well for the bottom, I'm going to take my yellow. I'm taking the tip of my brush into my water and then getting into my yellow. I want to refresh that puddle because I kind of used a lot of it. But tip of my brush so I have nice control here until it looks the way I want. And now I'm going to go through here and I'm going to look for like these diagonal lines with the yellow. So if I were to start right here and fill it in, and notice I'm just swiping paint in, I'm not worrying too much about getting into those corners, though you certainly may. I'm going to start with this diagonal line because I realized that this pattern is diagonal. You could go every other, but I think that's how I got confused on that first one and I filled it in wrong. So, and I'm going to come in and just keep doing it. So if I have too much water right now, it's not a big deal unless I just don't have any control. Because I know I can come back and lift a little bit of that out. If I don't have enough water though, it just sometimes what happens is it doesn't really look like watercolor, and it's hard to explain that, but the more you see it, the more you know. If you have a bunch of paint and not much water, it's going to act more like acrylic paint. So just watch for that. I cleaned my brush and I dried it, and I'm going to touch this and lift up anywhere where it's puddling or pooling. You're probably saying, Audrey, slow down, and I'll try to. But you can pause me here. This is what better than in-person classes when you're just, you know, you might be raging inside of your head for me to slow down. Right now, you have control. So now I've got those two colors. So I do want to do the centers and I want to do the other squares, but since they're different colors, I need to give it a quick dry. So let's go ahead and do that. Quick thought, I'm already obsessed with this. What if you added black pen with just this yellow and white? Super cool, right? So we're already thinking in the way of just making simple changes. Okay, so I could do this, but then this would be wet and I would have these next. So instead, I am going to focus again on the centers of the flowers and the other checkers. So I'll do the other checkers first. Make sure your puddle looks the way you want it to. And then remember, we want kind of like maybe the first third or half of our brush filled with our paint, but not the whole thing or it would feel out of control. And I also just realized, oh yeah, my stems are that same green, so why don't I even start with them? So I'm kind of going top to bottom. I just think I'm less likely to bump my wet paint. Now for the stems, they're so skinny. And so this is where you want to press very lightly, very light pressure on your brush. And that'll help you get like thinner stems. And that's hard to do. These things take practice. And then I'm going to go ahead in, and since I dried my yellow, I can go in here with my green, and I'm just going to start to kind of place paint in here, not actually worrying too much about those corners unless you want to. I have little hairs coming out of the top of my brush. If you ever notice that, you can just try to grab them. Anything that's going wrong while you're painting, don't just sit there and deal with it. Try to figure it out and just fix it, so it's not so frustrating. I have an in-person class tonight too, so I'm going to get lots of painting time in. Okay, I love them. The thing I do want is to straighten out those lines. So I just did that. And I'm just looking at it to make sure I've got everything filled in that I want. And I do. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to dry it one more time back to the dryer, and we'll go from there. We could have filled in those centers and I forgot. So I'm going to quick take my brush and that little teeny tiny bit of paint that I found. And since they're not touching, you know, everything around them is dry, it's nice because we could do them anytime. So why not now? Now, what if at this point you decided, I love this orange color, I want to change the vase to orange, but you already have your colors mixed? I'm going to remind you that these colors actually last pretty long and you don't have to use them. You can just make new puddles and make changes like that, and it's fine. But I'm going to stick with the blue, so I'm cleaning out my brush. And I am getting the paint on my brush for this blue. I'm going to fill in the whole thing. We will be back and forth to the dryers like, oh man, like 2 more times. So some of them are just like that. Okay, so I just filled in the whole thing. You can see that it's puddling or pooling. I'm going to touch my brush to my towel and come back a couple times and just lift it. Now it looks the same color. And from there, all right, I'll show you one thing. You can add a little bit of paint to your puddle and give it a shadow on this side if you want to. Then we still are going to have to dry this whole thing though before we do those next stripes. So quick dry here. A reminder that you can tell it's dry when you don't see the light reflecting on it anymore. So I stopped for a minute and used the dryer, and it's ready to go for me. I think though, so now we got 2 things left to paint, is this background and these stripes. So let's just get through it. We'll get the stripes done. Now for this one, remember, I just used from this puddle, and now I'm getting into this darker one that has less water and more paint. So you can see that difference. And I'm going to go into the second little stripe, light on the tip of my brush. These details I find you will notice a little bit more. So for these, try to worry about your details just a little bit. And run your brush along the lines that you created and then sort of fill in the shape from there. It's going to get tighter down here because I did add that extra one, but that's okay. One more and then I'm done because we're just doing every other. And if you wanted to at this point, you could add a little bit of darker paint into the right side of these stripes too. It's just not really necessary. We kind of did it underneath already and that helped, but it would kind of reinforce that just a little bit. So this is done and we're going to let it dry, and it's imperfect and we don't care. And this time only, actually I think this one I'm going to dry it right on camera. Because see, it didn't take very long because I didn't use very much water. And then now we're going to make our puddle for the background. So my puddle kind of already dried up. I'm seeing it here. I'm going to grab from my other puddles a little bit and get it this way. Notice how much bigger it is than the puddles we were just using. It's like decent size. But now I don't want to start with a full brush and then have to get around these tiny spaces. So I want it, I'm even adding a little bit more. I'll clean out my brush, dry it on my towel, and now I'm going to use like the first third of my brush right here because I'm looking at this and I go, these spaces are tiny to get around. So we're going to try something that is a little harder, and it's the flat wash around these tiny spaces. I'm going to start methodically and think about like moving a little puddle around this way. I don't want it to dry while I work because if it does, you'll see lines, and that is not the end of the world. But see, I'm filling in this section, and now I'm moving, kind of trying to come around my paper in one direction like that. Taking this excess and pulling it around. If I can grab that extra and just use it right now, that's kind of a nice way to do it. So when you're in these tight, tiny spaces, very light on the tip of your brush, you're holding your brush vertically. And then I'll move it around. The only reason I'm touching this again is to grab that excess water. Otherwise, I'll grab it at the end. So if it dries, it leaves marks because watercolor is transparent and it just shows that, but that's okay. So now I'm taking this, see, all together. So when you've got the space, lean into the belly of your brush. And because I was able to get all of this while it was wet, it's going to dry pretty nicely. Now I'm done. I'm touching my brush to my towel and coming right back to look for any puddling or pooling, but barely touching it. Touch it and then get out of there because you'll see it. And I kind of want to get in here to these spaces and fill them in. And then that's it. We are done. We're going to dry it. We're going to sign it. And then you are probably going to do like 2 more, right? And make little changes. Or not, but at least you know how for next time. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you tomorrow.